पाश्चात्य देश जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So my apologies, this Friday I could not take the session, and somehow we were away from the call. So let us begin. Uh, we had covered Patanjali Yoga system, all the 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. Now you just want to do a quick check. How many of you were present in the Patanjali Ashtanga Yoga class? Can you please raise your hands? Okay. Okay. So many of you. Fine. So now, having understood that in the process of yoga ladder, Dhyan Yoga is another stepping stone. From here on, one can migrate to the stage of unalloyed devotion to the Supreme Truth, who is addressed by various names. So, to the Muslim community, he is Allah. To the Christians, he is Father of Jesus, the God. To the Sanatan world, he is recognized as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So, today in this 6th chapter, we would be discussing Dhyana Yoga, but in a little bit of a different manner actually. Krishna assumes its readers, or at least Arjun, to very well know the idea of asan, pranayam, etc. So he only talks about the result of it, assuming that elementary knowledge is there. And that knowledge is now there available with all of you as well, because you have heard the class last week. The first 2 verses of chapter 6 talk about the same riddle that has been continuing ever since 3rd chapter. Arjun asks the difference between sacrifice and renunciation. And if you have missed out on that thread, then you must understand that the same question Arjun will repeat in chapter 18 also. What is the difference between Karma Yoga and Sankhya Yoga? What is the difference between sacrifice and renunciation? It's actually the same thing. Cessation of material activities is called renunciation, which basically means at that time the seeker is completely engaged in his meditation upon the nature of the truth, which means the nature of his spirit. And what is the nature of his spirit? It is imperishable. And how do you understand that? By looking at a reference point, that things around me, they have certain pattern. They take birth, they grow, they dwindle, they die. Look at a plant, look at a animal, look at a bird, look at a human. Everything has a beginning and an end. So by distinguishing like that, such a person does not get into activities, knowing fully well that every activity ultimately will give little joy and more suffering. So that cessation of activities is called renunciation. Whereas sacrifice is performing the activity and giving up the result of that activity. So that is called sacrifice. And when you give up the result of the activity for Krishna, then that is qualified as akarma or karma yoga. So now the Lord mixes the two things. And for a while, the whole thing will look very hazy to you. So here in the first 2 verses, Krishna says, one who is devoid, sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na cha akriya. So na niragnir na cha akriya means a person who is constantly engaged. He becomes sa sannyasi cha yogi cha. So now I'm starting with the session by just giving you a little bit of background how chapter 6 begins. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Gnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadamahiyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyaham Shri Gurun Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamshcha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पदान् सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So here Krishna says that actually, Arjun, there is no difference between sannyas and yoga. There is no difference between renunciation and sacrifice. Now, this is extremely subtle. So do not think that actually there is no difference. There is a difference, but there is no difference. How does one understand that? Let us look at it. Aruruksha is a stage in yoga, and Arudha is another stage in yoga. So Aruruksha stage, Krishna says, when somebody is a neophyte in sadhana, at that time he should not give up his work. Kindly hear this carefully. When somebody is a new seeker, he should not abruptly give up his work. And then Krishna says, for Aruruksha, work is the means of purification. So if you are an engineer or a doctor or a painter or a cricketer and you start exploring the path of Brahman, supreme truth, then merely by reading some scripture and without the under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, if you abruptly give up what you do, then you do not know how to fill that glass back. So Aruruksh, the new seeker, shall not abruptly give up the work. Be very careful about it. Because for him, work is the means to purify himself. Whereas one who is elevated in yoga, who is yoga rudh, you know, like on a horse, atop is the actual meaning of arud. So you go atop a horse or a chariot. So one who is firm in yoga, for him cessation of material activities is good. But now is the answer to the question. If you have already stopped the material activities on the mental plane, then there is no harm in doing the activity either. Like Maharaj Janak does, like the Lord Krishna himself does. So he has said elsewhere that it is not imperative for me to create these worlds. It isn't. I'm not, it's not bounding, it's not binding in nature upon me. But I still do. And if I don't do, I will become the cause of annihilation of so many living entities' peace. So, at a stage of ideal renunciation, then one perpetually works like sun. Having heard Bhagavad Gita from Krishna himself, sun is perpetually revolving. So then they'll say, what are you saying? Sun doesn't revolve. it's the earth. So then you need to go back and refer to Google or perhaps to any other search engine. I'm sorry, I just happened to say that, but any search engine, and you figure out that actually sun also rotates. In comparison with Earth, the speed is so fast that it is considered negligible, and therefore it's all right to consider the sun as stationary. But otherwise, it's moving. In fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Vedic cosmology explains how does that happen. The difference between heliocentric and geocentric models is the difference of frame of reference. If I am standing here and looking there, my view would be different. If I'm standing on the other side and looking on this side, my view would be a little different. So it depends on from where are you looking at the thing. In Vedic culture, we do not look at a thing from our perspective. We look at the thing from the top as an overview, as a proper view. So I hope now that when Krishna describes Aruruksh and Arud, Aruruksh is one should not stop working because initially work is the means to purification. And towards the end, when one has no requirement for purificatory activities, at that time he should still not stop because then he starts working for the supreme welfare as his service to Krishna. So Yog Aruruksh is our stage. So we must not stop working ever. Ever in the sense till the time we are not completely purified. And once we are yoga ruled, then there is anyway no need to stop the work. This is the fundamental tenet of Bhagavad Gita, which many people misinterpret. They think karma yoga means one should continuously do one's duty. It is partial understanding. One should do the duty, give up the result for the satisfaction of Supreme. Then the cycle is complete. Without it, the cycle is not complete. So yes, Bhagavad Gita talks about Karma Yoga, but it doesn't talk about over endeavor for tiny achievements. It's talking about perpetual endeavor with a purpose to please the Supreme. So you do it for Him. So that first four verses in chapter 6, Krishna covers this aspect, Aruruksh and Arud. Verse number 5, 6, 7, 19, 25, 26, 27, 33, 34, 35, 36. In these verses, Krishna talks about mind. So many of you are very, very curious because the moment we think of mind, we want to know more and more. So from Shastra, I'll tell you the nature of mind. So there is a verse in which the description of mind is there. So how does mind look like? So first you have to imagine that there is a monkey. So mind is a monkey. All right. Which means basically restless. Now the second thing you have to do is you make this monkey drink some wine. So one is a mind, which is a monkey. Now it's a drunk monkey. On top of it, it has been bitten by a scorpion. So it's a monkey, it's a drunk monkey, and got a stung from a scorpion. And on top of this monkey is haunted. So you have four conditions. And keep visualizing. If you visualize a monkey restlessly jumping from this thing to another, one tree branch to another branch. Restless, no purpose, just doing it. up, down, this way, that way. Once it is drunk, the control is even less. Then stung. What is this stung? Then the force of thoughts, intensity of thoughts, vegam, stung. And then the flux of apprehension of reactions, that's like haunted, constantly thinking. Now, that is, dear seekers, is the actual nature of mind. And we all, living entities, souls, have been given this fireball to live with. Welcome to the reality. Today, if Krishna grants mercy, I shall be able to give you a glimpse of mind, practically, by which you will understand the peace and the happiness that Krishna talks about. First, we must understand who are we talking about. This is the fellow. Then Krishna himself says that one should elevate oneself with the help of mind. One shouldn't let oneself fall due to mind. This mind is the friend of the living entities and best friend, and the same mind is the biggest enemy of the living entity. You don't have enemies outside, you have threat from inside. That's why I use the word fireball. Imagine a fireball given in your hand. All you do is keep jumping it, because otherwise it will burn you. On the soul, the covering of mind is tremendous. And this is how it behaves. It's a drunk monkey, smitten, and haunted. How tough it is. And then Arjun also thinks Krishna is saying, control the mind. He says, I can control wind, but I can't control mind. I'm sorry. Krishna says, yes, it is very difficult to control. But by detachment and vairagya, that's what it is. And practice. So detachment is vairagya, practice is abhyas. By doing it daily, you can achieve it. So now we will simplify the whole thing and look at what is what. And why is Krishna laying so much emphasis on this mind, 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 and the chatter of the mind? Then we will go to Dhyana Yoga. So here, between your two eyebrows is the mind. And here, in the region of the heart, is the chitta, the storehouse of tendencies. And that storehouse of tendencies has multiple impressions from previous lifetimes and this lifetime as well. And from this, 88,000 times thoughts are popping up and coming onto this plane of mind. And they have varying degrees of intensities. Some will say, eat this, eat this, eat this, eat this. Some will say, see this, see this, see this, see this. Some would say, hear it, hear it, hear it, hear it. And all of this is popping up here. So we have a combination of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Rajogun, Satogun, Tamogun. Those impressions we have cultivated over the passage of time. And some are so strong that intelligence doesn't get time to even intervene. So what does the intelligence do? The intelligence has the duty of discrimination. It discriminates. This should be done, this should not be done. I given this class earlier also that, a child going to an electric socket initially doesn't know that what will happen if the switch is on, and child goes and inserts his finger and he gets a electric shock. Till then the child was like mind. Now his intelligence, we said no, in future we will not go and touch it because it hurts. That's intelligence. It's a discriminating agency. There is a difference between brain and intelligence. Brain is hardware. People mistake mind for brain. They are also not same at all. At all. Mind has three functions: thinking, feeling, and willing. You have a thought of an ice cream, then you have a visual of an ice cream, and then you go and purchase one. So thinking, feeling, willing. That's what mind does. But the thought generates from the plane of chitta, and those thoughts are popping up here in the plane of mind. So imagine it's like an arrow shot, ta-dang, 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 one after another. And they may be same type or different types. That's why Krishna says in 15th chapter, Manaha Shasthani Indriyani Prakriti Sthani Karshati, along with five senses, and sixth being the mind. All you living entities who are my part and parcel, all of you are constantly struggling. So today I'm telling each and every seeker who is there, when you hear all this chatter and nonsense, things are fine. We are doing good. Life is cool. And everything would be fine. You just think like that, and things around you would, they will start changing. These are very of this, these all statements are of little value. One must be situated in knowledge, then one becomes realistic. Here today we are hearing about the nature of mind, activities of mind, nature of intelligence, activities of intelligence. So there is material intelligence and there is spiritual intelligence. So when you read scripture under some guidance, then you cultivate spiritual intelligence. Then that intelligence can work upon mind, because intelligence has more strength than mind. What are you saying, Radhapati Prabhu? Mind is the strongest, mightiest. No, it is just that we don't use our intelligence. We do not sufficiently train our intelligence. So we become a lethal combination of a stubborn mind and weak intelligence, wherein we know what is right, but we can't do what is right. Dhritarashtra's example in first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we discussed it. He knows what is correct, but he can't do what is correct because his mind is drawn towards his son. Having understood this concept of your subtle body, wherein you have a chitta, you have a mind, you have an intelligence. On top of mind and intelligence sitting, there's one entity which is called false ego. That fellow orders to do things. And false ego means there is something false about it. So why is it called false ego? Because it is the ego of temporary entity or temporary identity, sorry. It is the ego of temporary identity. Once it becomes the ego of soul, it is a right ego. When it is the ego of body, subtle or physical, then it's a false ego. This is how it must be understood. Then, once you know that, okay, I have a fireball in the hand, how do I live? This is the part where I'm, praying to the Lord that I can convey what I want to convey about the nature of mind. Dear devotees, the origin of mind is through mode of goodness. The origin of intelligence is through mode of passion. The origin of physical senses, eyes, ears, etc., is through mode of ignorance. These are all advanced level topics. So I'm not going to go in more depth about it, but just you should know it. So it is counterintuitive to hear that the origin of mind is in mode of goodness. By nature, something which is so fickle, constantly moving, causing so much of chatter inside us. How can that organ be situated or originate from mode of goodness, which is peace? So now hear this. When you practice yoga or rituals of yoga, then you attain a stage where mind becomes tranquil, it becomes peaceful. When that flow of thoughts decreases, in that proportion, mind relishes. If thoughts are not there, mind is purest. Do you know, with that mind, you can see yourself. When the mind is clear, one can see oneself. Oh, I am soul sitting inside. Because the whole thing has become, the mirror has become cleansed of the dirt of impressions, good or bad. Then you see yourself. And Krishna insists, this chapter says, when you see yourself, then you become joyful. And it's a bundle-less joy. It keeps on increasing. With that pure mind, when one gets darshan of oneself, there is no end to that relishing. There is no end to that joy. Can you imagine what a perfect mind can do? In itself, it can show us our identity. And the Lord claims that one who has thus controlled the mind has actually already achieved the super soul. Because when you see yourself, you can also see the super soul sitting right beside us. Such a person can see all other living entities and the super soul sitting in them. Such is the achievement of mind when it is cleansed. Then there is no fear, absolutely no fear, because you could see yourself. You're just situated in that realm. And how did you achieve it? By the bona fide process of yogic practices. These are different in nature. Somebody is through the method of distinction, somebody is through the method of activity, somebody is through this method of breathing that we are discussing right now, and somebody is by surrender to the Supreme Person. But they all can achieve this stage of self realization. They all do. But I just want to bring home the point that mind is born out of goodness. Intelligence has to decide this, that, maybe, okay, so these are the pluses, these are the minuses, but I will, at the end of the day, I would be, better off if I take this decision and pay this opportunity cost, and I'm okay with this sunk cost. So now let's go ahead. That's intelligence. So that's mode of passion. Mind is goodness. And in that goodness, everything is clear, tranquil, peaceful. How many of you felt a bit peaceful by hearing what I just said in 2, 3 minutes? I want to know if I could connect with you. I'm happy. Krishna was merciful. So we must therefore aspire for cleansing this mirror of the mind. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya said, Cheto darpanamarjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam. श्रेयः कैरव चन्द्रिका वितरणम् विद्यावधुजीवनम् आनन्दं बुद्धिवर्धनं प्रतिपदम् पूर्णामृत आस्वादनम् सर्वात्मस्नपनं परं विजयते श्री कृष्ण sankirtanam. By the chanting of this Hare Krishna Mahamantra, 7 benefits occur. But the very first benefit is Cheto Darpan Marjanam. It cleanses the dust from the mirror of Chitta. All these thoughts that were popping up on the plane of the mind are over. They won't disturb the mind anymore. Such a peaceful mind will enter into a stage of boundless joy of self. And here, many people say, "Oh, but how does one achieve that?" Because they don't feel any urge for relishing all the good things that we have in this world. The answer to this question is because they have tasted the joy of self-realization, and nothing as compared to that taste stand before them. Everything in comparison with Brahman is insignificant. It's insignificant. Then whether it is pizza, pasta, ice cream, come what may, these are all things which your mind likes currently. Then whether it is earthquake, or it is tsunami, or it is flood, or it is even solitary confinement, even that, one is not bewildered. This is the power. Krishna says, in the midst of biggest calamity, that yogi is not disturbed because his mind is clean. He can see the self, and that self can't be killed. He knows it. Sitting inside the body, he can see the permanent existence of soul. He realizes it. Now we are entering into chapter 6. So Krishna says, Arjun, I told you about achieving this method via doing your activity and offering it to me, or via mental speculation, wherein you distinguish between permanent and temporary. But now I'm telling you something different. You can take that path as well. And this path is the path of Dhyana Yoga, linking with the Supreme Yoga, linking with the Supreme via meditation. And to fix yourself in meditation, Arjun, you have to look at certain stages. So he says, such a peaceful yogi, a seeker, must figure out a place for himself, which should not be too high, too low. And on that place, he should cover it with kusha grass, and then with the cloth made of the lion's skin, and then he should sit upon it tightly, firmly. Krishna is assuming asana, pranayam, etc. has happened, and then with his eyes half closed so that he doesn't fall asleep, he should meditate on the front portion, tip of the nose. Now, Dhyana Yoga, so he has to link, so therefore he's getting into the meditation. So Krishna talks about pre-yoga posture. But what are the qualities of this fellow? So in the previous verses, not in previous chapter, in the same 6th chapter, previous verses, he says, such a yogi, Arjun, does not differentiate between gold and pebbles. For him, they are same. But Arjun, if you ask me, is there a yogi more advanced? Then listen to me. That yes, one who does not differentiate between gold and pebble is good, but better than him is a person who doesn't differentiate between People who envy him, people who love him, people who are neutral about him. He's not concerned with them either. And such a person goes into a secluded, solitary place, situates himself on an asana, and then constantly engages himself on thinking about me. This perplexes Arjun. He said, all the time thinking about you. Krishna says, yes, that's a condition. Because that's a stage when you can think about me is called samadhi. Dear seekers, samadhi doesn't have to be stationary. In the midst of your office work, one can be in samadhi. If you are connected and doing everything for Krishna or the Supreme Truth, you are in samadhi. So I want you to get out of that, get yourself pulled out of that notion that samadhi means this stillness. If you are connected and your every activity is happening for Supreme, you are in samadhi because you're doing it for Krishna. Arjun finds it really tough. He says he's saying that no activity now, just sit at a place and meditate upon me. Can you imagine, dear seekers, how tough it is now? It's mighty tough. How long can you do it? Forever, as long as you are there in this body. So Arjun says, what you have told Krishna is extremely difficult. One, because mind is stubborn. And now I am becoming anxious because what happens to those who take this path and don't get success? It's such a pitiful, it's a pitiable condition. That fellow, he left the world, went for the search of the truth, didn't get truth, couldn't enjoy world. He's like finished like a cloud, hither and thither, of no use. And here is the answer, the two answers for all of you. The first answer is, you will be happy to hear. Krishna says, no, Arjun. Right thing can never be overcome by evil. If you have practiced yoga, then whatever you have done will be preserved. And whatever contaminated desires you had, or desires meant for self enjoyment or temporary self enjoyment, to fulfill those desires, the yogi is sent to higher planets where for thousands of years he enjoys those things. Then he comes back and he takes birth either in a very rich family or in the family of transcendentalists. So I'm requesting each one of you, never be disappointed. Every hour in 1 week that you give to this, for this purpose, this is not going in vain. This is counting. It's adding up. And there would be a threshold beyond which transformation will become visible. It is happening already. But after that threshold, it will manifest. So first of all, no need to be disappointed. If you become unsuccessful in this life, it will be carried forward. You start again. You move next, you move next, you move next, like that. And the second thing is, Krishna says, wherever he takes birth, he starts from there, from where he left. These days, if you see closely, I don't know, those Saregama and those music competitions, etc. Some kids, if you watch them closely, you can clearly make out that they have been performers of this art in their previous life. It's very easy, whether a budding cricketer or a budding singer, one can make out. For such a person, Krishna says rituals don't apply to him. He's beyond rituals. So Lata Mangeshkar doesn't have to really do all things. because she is naturally, as you say, she's naturally talented, naturally gifted. What does that mean? It means in previous lifetime, this person has already earned it. Now, my dear seekers, what happened to the concept of equality then? By birth, we are all equal. No, by birth, we are unequal. Fair, but unequal. Because somebody has earned certain things in previous life. And in that stream, that person is going to do better than you. By birth, he has those tendencies. And therefore, he will have that advantage or disadvantage. And by hearing what you just heard, your whole notion of equality turns haywire. It's a perpetual cycle. No two people in this world are equal. So, what therefore equality truly means is safeguarding the rights of others is equality. And one must focus on that. That all right, same age, same class, but I know for sure that in mathematics that girl is going to beat everyone else because she's naturally talented. Then the teacher should be careful. That girl should be asked to sit for Olympiads or for higher exams or where the toughness is justified. And that's how you create a level playing field. One must focus on creating a level playing field. It applies in capitalism also, it applies in communism also. The scions of industrialist families, they would naturally have a first mover advantage and what you call nepotism, you know, because their children have that advantage. So, how do you create a level playing field? That's where maximum focus should go. It should not go on, gender based identities or religion based identities or caste based identities or even nation based identities. I'm sorry, the whole thing became a bit complex, but I'm just highlighting that how our notions, when we study Bhagavad Gita, then we come to know that we are acting like little ignorant children, fully convinced of our worldview, because we never open a book like this, which can tell us that no, it doesn't work like that. We are born not equal. I will come back into the chapter now. So, after getting this assurance from Arjun, sorry, from Krishna, that okay, I must be satisfied that this attempt in yogic practice doesn't go in vain. And I will take birth again if I don't become successful. But then there is a scary thing. For Dhyaan Yoga, Krishna says, after many, many births of practice, the yogi ultimately achieves me. This is scary. Many, many births. And there also, some births, if you get captured by some aspects of Maya, you may get derailed. Ultimately, you will succeed because you have quota of positive things with you. But it may take time because you keep getting distracted. So therefore, Krishna then says, better than an ascetic, better than a worker is Yogi Arjun. So in every respect, I want you to be a yogi. And there comes the most beautiful verse of this whole chapter. Yoginam api sarveshu madgatir antaratma. Amongst all those yogis, the best is one who is intimately connected with me. I'm now going to turn the whole chapter upside down from here. One who is intimately connected with me. This is a prelude to the Bhakti Yoga. He's going to start Bhakti Yoga now. जब मैं था तब हरि नहीं, जब हरि है तो मैं नहीं। प्रेम गली अति साकरी, जा मैं दो न समाही। When I had ego, जब मैं था तब हरि नहीं, then the supreme truth was not available, because I was convinced about my temporary identity and I used to think everything basis that. जब हरि है तो मैं नहीं, and when Krishna is here, then there is complete absence of that temporary false ego. प्रेम गली अति साकरी, जब, how should, I don't know what English word do we can use to describe that, but the path of love is very narrow. Jame dona samahi, it can't adjust two people, it's so narrow. What does that mean? That means that a devotee who is in love with Krishna, Krishna uses, even in sixth chapter, he says something with the effect of सर्वत्र च मयि पश्यति तस्या aham na pranashyami sacha me na pranashyati. One who sees me everywhere and who sees everything in me, such a person never loses me from sight, and nor do I ever lose him. The cream of this whole chapter 6, one is of course that Dhyan Yoga is difficult to pull off. But Krishna had to show him all the methods. So he talked about this as well today. But then he also talked about perils of it by highlighting that many, many births it takes. And then all you have to do is sit and think about me. So then you realize that, oh, I'm not Arud, I'm Aruruksh, which means I'm a neophyte. So what should I do? Then I should do things for the pleasure of the Lord and purify myself and keep doing it, then the purification will happen. After that also, I should keep doing so that other people can, by my example, they also get purified. But towards the end in Dhyan Yoga, he says, Yoginam api sarveshu. The best amongst those yogis is the one who is intimately connected with me. Mad gatir antaratma. I'm going to give 5 minutes to what do we mean when we say intimately connected with me. Look around you when you think of saintly personalities, whether it is Tulsidas, or it is Surdas, or it is Guru Nanak, or it is Jesus. I don't know how many of you actually ever thought about this statement where Jesus prays to God that, Dear Father, please forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. There are two things. One is Jesus' compassion on ignorant people, that how he's being treated by them. And he's still, you know, not affected by that torture. That is because he's situated. Through the clean mind, he can see self. So he's not worried about that treatment. That's an achievement in itself. But for Jesus, it's not an achievement. For Jesus, the higher level or realm of existence is where he's intimately connected with Father. He says, Dear Father, please forgive them. Because he knows they will be severely punished. So he's blocking and making arrangements for these people. For they know not, they don't know what they are doing. They are ignorant. These saintly people are intimately connected. There was Bilva Mangal Thakur, who was so intimately connected with Krishna that, he didn't want any disturbance. And Bilva Mangal Thakur couldn't get rid of lusty desires. And one fine day, he reached to the house of a a devotee, knocked at the devotee's door, and devotee saw Bilvamangal Thakur coming, and he was overwhelmed, and he, sort of made him sit and gave him all the honors. And Bilvamangal Thakur said, I will take food at your house and I'll take rest in your house. And then he saw his wife cooking, etc. And he became lusty. Now he's a devotee and he's being tortured by senses. So then he told that host, he said, I want to make a request to you. And this is a time when hosts were hosts, and they would value any devotee coming to their house. So that host said, yes, please ask me. He said, I want private time with your wife for some time. It was difficult for him, but he said, okay. And the wife came into the room, and Bilvamangal Thakur said, can you give me 2 big needles? She felt a bit awkward. She said, okay, I'll give you. And she brought 2 needles. And then Bilvamangal Thakur was crying. And he said, Krishna, I don't know any other mechanism to control lust. Because if I see, I feel it. Saying this, he took those 2 needles and inserted into his eyes. And forever he became blind. And this Bilvamangal Thakur wrote some of the most intimate poetry of Srimati Radharani and Krishna's love affairs. These are intimately connected with God. So, when we are engaged in loving devotional service to Supreme Truth, all these stages of Karma Yoga, Dhyaan Yoga, Gyan Yoga, now I can tell you this because I am at the end of the 6th chapter. You are going to enter into the realm of Bhakti Yoga from the next chapter itself. You bypass all these stages by directly becoming Krishna conscious or God conscious. So one should directly try and connect through the via medium of spiritual master and by engaging into meaningful service. That's the trick, intimately connected. One should focus on how can I connect myself with God, like Jesus did, like Bilva Mangata. And there can be many examples which I can give. Surdas' last thing I'm saying, famous verse also, where he says, Haath chudaye jaat ho Prabhu, nirbal jaan ke mohe, hriday se jo jao to sabal janu mein to hai. Krishna, you are leaving me because I am blind and you're powerful. Haath chudaye jaat ho. I held you by your hand, but you pushed me away. Prabhu, nirbal jaan ke moh, thinking that I am physically not so fit. Hriday se jo jao to sabal janu mein to. If you get out of my heart, then I'll think that yeah, you are very powerful. Because devotees capture Krishna in their heart. Welcome to chapter 7 next week. We would be discussing about Krishna's opulence, nature of devotees, how they interact, how Bhakti Yoga is performed. And it's not some propaganda to establish the supremacy of Bhakti Yoga. It's a natural progression by which ultimately everybody has to reach there. Saying this, I would, put this class to a halt. Is there any question? I can take one question and we can then be done with it. Or if you have any remark, if you want anything that I should improve upon, then please do let me know that as well. Yes, Abhimanyu Prabhu, tell me.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I had one question that I'd been thinking about for a while. So when we have discussed other chapters as well, we talk about controlling the senses and emotions, anger being one of them. But there's this contradictory thing that we read so often that the rishis in the old time, they used to get angry and curse people, like Karn himself, Karn was cursed by none other than Parshuram, Sri Parshuram himself. Vishwamitra was known to be very prone to anger. Like, how do we relate these two things? Once, on one hand, we say that it's important to control your anger, and then we see that people who were known to be great sages were also prone to anger.
Two reasons, Prabhu. One is justified anger, like Hanuman had when he burnt Lanka, when Arjun was killing, getting upset over people who were spreading irreligion. So that anger is bona fide anger, and that does not disturb in your path of progress. The second part is whether it is Vishwamitra or other, even Parsuram for that matter, uh, because they were not pure devotees. Maharaj Ambrish was a pure devotee. He could control anger. So we should know that they were not exactly yoga rude. They were yoga aruruksha. They hadn't reached there. So while they could control other aspects of their personality, this one they could not. Even Lord Shiva couldn't. And Lord Shiva is not a Jiva Tattva, he's very superior, but still, just to teach everybody else, we should know that uh, till the time one is not cent percent surrendered, these traces of contamination will keep popping up some way or other. So that's the answer, that they were not pure devotees. They were yogis, they were trying, but not successful. That's why, you know, particularly like Parshuramji, after 21 times he annihilated, all the Kshatriya clans. Then he came to this understanding because he was a Shaktiya Vesh avatar. He was empowered by Krishna, but not that he was Krishna in that sense. So he admitted that, yeah, I perhaps, I have no need now to do any such thing anymore. This will keep on happening. So he then gave up his parsa and became, situated. So till the time you're not purified, you can't control.
Ji
Even
Prabhuji.
at stages. Any remark, any comment you want to make? Anybody else?
Parvati has a question, Prabhuji.
Sure. Please ask Parvati Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dhanavad Pranam.
Pranam.
Prabhu, how do we know we are following the right bhakti, Prabhu? And we are
That
in
we will
bhakti.
discuss in the next 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. For next 6 weeks, we would be discussing what is the right path, and you shall get your answer there.
Okay, okay, Prabhu.
Thank you so much. Allow me to take leave now. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Guru Maharaj ki jai. All glories to all of you. Then with Pranam.
Thank you, Prabhuji.